Anyway, the floor is yours. Enjoy.
Now, I don't necessarily, how do you turn that?
Don't want all?
No, yeah. That's, I just wondered,
You
yeah.
have to
pretty
use
close.
it, you have to use it, you can't.
Okay, gotta grab it.
I have actually a pretty loud voice, so I'll ask the back part. Can you hear me okay? Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
it's the people with hearing problems in the
can
front
you,
there.
oh, okay, can you hear us? No?
Speak right to them. You'll have to project.
You're straining to listen.
Okay.
You're straining to listen.
Okay.
Project your voice.
Hmm?
Project your voice. You're not projecting right now. Like a school teacher.
Yeah, we'll,
Everybody uses it.
yeah, not used to
Gotta
using
be
them.
like this,
Yeah,
like
that's what I don't like. Okay, is that better?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so for those who don't know me, I'm Lois from the Chocolate Rabbit. We started the store in 2006, and we have a full complement of machines running. I brought some chocolate tonight, so my objective is to go through the history of chocolate, which is very, very rich. The chocolate history is about 4,000 years old. It actually, chocolate history started in Latin America with a group called the Olmecs. And they actually, there's not a lot known about them in the history, but there is one thing that they did give us. They gave us the word cacao. And back at their version of pronunciation of cacao was cacawa. And so that's how we came to the word cacao, and a lot of us just call it cocoa. So from there, what we really do know a lot about is the Mayans and their history with the chocolate. They came about 1,000 years after the Olmecs, so we have a little more knowledge of where it came with the Mayans. So the Mayans would harvest the cocoa pods, and it's going to be a lot different than what we know today. So a cocoa pod, this is a cocoa pod from a cocoa tree. This is what it looks like. I'm going to show you a short 8-minute video that will also describe a little bit about the history. But just by way of introduction, these trees grow from 20 to 60 feet tall. And these pods, it's not like fruit hanging off an apple tree where they hang on branches. These grow directly out of the side of the tree. Yeah, they grow directly on the side of the tree. And when they're green, they're not ripe, but they turn beautiful colors of purple, reds, yellows, and the farmers all know when they're ripe. The actual flower is a tiny little flower that grows on the tree, and there's a small fly called a midgie. And the midgie is the one that actually pollinates it, that grows where we get the plant, the cocoa pod from. The trees, and when you look at, when we look at chocolate, and we know there's chocolate, you can get a Snickers bar right up into what we sell in the store. And you'll see and understand as we go through the presentation and the video, that it's very labor intensive. There's no machinery. This is all hand harvested. You cannot climb these trees. They all grow in the shade of a forest. They grow in the wild, they're tropical. They grow actually 20 degrees either north or south of the equator is where the cacao trees can be found. The harvesting, they have to use sharp knives and sometimes with long handles on them to bring them down from the trees. So you can't climb the trees, they're way too soft. What you end up with when they open this up, and you'll see this in the video, is this is a cutaway of the cocoa pod. What's inside is the cocoa bean. This is where chocolate comes from. There's only about 50 to 60 beans inside the cocoa pod. So it takes a lot of these beans to make chocolate. There is a white pulp that is on this. When it comes out, it has to be scooped out of the cocoa pod, and then from there, it's laid to be dried. They put banana leaves over top of it, they dry it, it gets fermented, and then it gets onto the factory. So there's a real process just to get it to the factory, and then to get it to us as well. From here, from the bean, it's got a hard shell on it. So they winnow it and get the shell off, and this is what we have left. This is what we make chocolate from, these little cocoa nibs. They're very healthy, there's no sugar in them. This is basically raw chocolate. So the Mayans, there was no sugar back then. So what they would do, the way they had chocolate, is they would actually mix it in a drink. It kind of looks like that dirty water mud puddle look, is what it looked like. When you see the video, you know what I'm talking about. And they would actually put spices and cinnamon and hot peppers in it, and that's what chocolate was. It was also called, basically, I think it was called like the fruit of the gods. There's a lot of folklore around the chocolate as well. The cocoa nibs, basically chocolate as we know it today, and I'm going to ask if anybody wants to try a sample before I turn the video on. But chocolate as we know it today in the hard form didn't come about until 1850. That was 1850. And it was actually the Swiss that developed milk chocolate. And then, of course, we know we have names like Cadbury, Lindt, Callebaut. They all got into it at the time. The chocolate didn't get to Europe until we had the Aztecs that invaded the Mayans and took over. And the other thing that's really neat about the history of chocolate, when you were growing up, did your parents ever tell you that money didn't grow on trees?
Yeah.
We all heard that, right? Guess what? It used to. Money used to grow on trees. Because cocoa, the chocolate, the cocoa beans were currency up until the 19th century. Is that me?
Yeah, you got it too close.
So I told you I didn't like using these either. They're too close or too far away. Yeah, so it was currency. So for instance, 10 beans would buy you a rabbit. 100 beans would buy you a slave. And they used that as currency up until the 19th century. It was used still as currency. As a matter of fact, the Aztecs preferred the cocoa beans over the gold dust. So it was the primary currency. And they used to keep the currency, I think the currency was like 25,000 beans in one bag. Right? A little different than our gold bullions today. So just a really neat little fact about the fact that, you know, money actually did at some point in time grow on trees. So what I'm going to do is, before I run the video, I'd like to see if anybody wants to try the cocoa nibs, because you've seen the pods now, you've seen the inside, you're going to see it on the video. But I think it'd be really interesting for you to try cocoa or chocolate in its very raw state. So I brought a spoon. It is going to be bitter. I warn you now, there's no sugar in this, but this is raw chocolate, and this is the way it used to be used before we started adding milk and sugar to it. Okay, so who's up for trying the raw chocolate? Please don't spit it out on the floor. Oh, that's a lot. Okay, I'll try not to do so many. Actually, I like it. I find it very nutty. I find it a very nutty flavor. Very healthy. You can put it on, like, you can put it in yogurt. We sell it at the store.
Good, Cindy?
Really?
Yeah, we sell it in raw form. And it's got scientific backing now. Yeah, if you like dark chocolate, you'll probably like this. If you don't like dark chocolate, no, I'll try. Everybody's up for a little bit of an adventure today?
Could you do chocolate, Lois, otherwise I'd try.
No, okay. How about back here? Do we have any adventurous people?
3 customers. as far as we
3
know.
customers, okay.
Thank you.
How about you, dear? Oh, wow, good.
Just a couple.
Just chocolate without the sugar.
Yeah. That is chocolate. That is raw chocolate.
Oh, good.
I like it. Now, we're gonna have, I thought there was a speaker system here. Okay, I thought there was a speaker system here that I could hook my computer up to. I have a small set of speakers. I apologize, there's folks that maybe can't hear it that well, because it's not a powerful speaker. It's very small ones for small classes that I teach. So I hope we're okay with that.
Well, can't you put the microphone near your speaker on your computer?
Well, I'll try that.
And he can adjust the volume to suit.
Okay. Let's try it. So, what do you think? Yeah?
Really good.
Yeah. Some people find it a little bitter, you know, like, okay, what's that? But that's chocolate. That's what they used to use.
I don't find it has a lot of flavor to it.
I find it nutty. That's my
Yeah,
taste buds.
yes, that's right. It
Get
would
a
be
little
more-
nutty to it,
More
yeah.
from a nut source than taste
Yeah.
of chocolate.
Yeah.
So how much would this little portion that you put in most of our hands, what would that represent as far as one of the beans?
$30.
Three rabbits. Three rabbits.
Yeah, like with the meat, did you use 2 or 3 beans here?
I would think what I handed out might be 2 or 3 beans.
Yeah.
Yeah, for everybody combined, might be 2 or 3 beans. It takes a lot of those to make chocolate. All right, let's see if we can get this up. We had some technical difficulties.
Yeah, it's just fine. Did you try it, right? No. Do you see anything tastes like coffee? I did have that in there.
Make sure she went there.
I don't think so.
Not by all the emails.
Oh, yeah, that works well. All right.
Chocolate has an uplifting experience. People eat chocolate, get sort of a euphoria from it.
Cocoa means food of the gods in indigenous language.
The history of chocolate can be traced to the indigenous people of Mexico.
Cocoa played a very important role in ancient societies of Mesoamerica.
It was the gold standard of the time. Every transaction was measured in cocoa beans. It was also the main ingredient for a special drink.
The chocolate of today has developed into an estimated $40 billion global business. In a recent study, 50% of women said that they would rather eat chocolate than have sex. Chocolate's high profile actually has modest beginnings within a small state of Mexico called Tabasco.
The making of chocolate is a very long, labor-intensive process. We start from cultivating the tree to the final product. I feel great living here. We live out of the land, surrounded by this beauty, this garden, this natural market. We want to preserve the places that we take our resources from.
Native people here live in harmony with the surroundings. This land that we own is very valuable to private corporations and to the government. They want to sell it in order to open roadways and to build businesses, but we have decided not to do it because this land belongs to the native people of this area. Making chocolate is what people do here. We want to keep the tradition of chocolate alive.
If we don't respect the places and the traditions of native people, sooner or later we'll destroy them. And if we lose our indigenous people, we will lose our history forever.
As the Aztec legend goes, Quetzalcoatl, the plumed serpent god, assumed human form and descended to earth on a beam of the morning star. He loved his people so much that he decided to give them a distinctive present, a special plant from the Garden of Paradise, the cocoa tree. Quetzalcoatl planted the small tree in the fields of Tula and asked his brother, God, Tlaloc, to feed it with rain. The small tree bore fruit, and Quetzalcoatl collected the pods and taught women how to prepare a special drink meant only for the gods. He called it Xocoatl. For the indigenous people, cocoa was reserved for warriors, nobility, and priests. They esteemed its reputed ability to confer wisdom and vitality.
The cocoa tree is originally from the American continent and only grows within the 21st and 22nd parallels, which is part of the tropics. The Olmecs, the oldest civilization of Mesoamerica, where they domesticated the first tree 4,000 years ago.
After the Olmecs domesticated the first tree, the Mayas in 600 AD migrated into the northern regions of Central America, establishing the earliest cocoa plantation in Chimtampa territory in eastern Tabasco. By this time, cocoa had become the most valued possession among Mesoamerican tribes. It was so important that Aztecs who didn't have cocoa would endure great hardship to obtain this precious bean.
The long-distant merchants called Pochtecas, actually warriors, they would walk for days to the neighboring kingdom of the Mayas to trade goods for cocoa. It became so valuable that it was used as currency. Every cocoa bean was assigned a rate so that they could count each unit to determine the value and exchange them for merchandise. And of course, they used it to prepare chocolate, which means bitter water in Nahuatl, the oldest language of the Aztecs.
According to the particular taste of the people from Mexico, chocolate started as a hot, spicy drink.
Chocolate in Mexico is a drink. It was born as a drink and still is a drink. There were different ways to prepare chocolate, but the finest of all was called chilcahuatl.
Dried cocoa beans were roasted and ground into a paste. They would beat the paste into a frothy drink and add hot peppers and dried chili.
Traditionally, the drink is served in cups called chicaros, or in very ornamented goblets made specifically for the emperor and his court.
Our ancestors used to say that you couldn't be angry or fighting with someone when preparing chocolate, or chocolate won't work. They said that it would turn into dust, and we become even happier when we drink it.
Providing happiness is probably the key to the success of chocolate. Although at first contact, Europeans didn't see chocolate as something they could eat, but certainly they were intrigued by the prospect of growing money on trees.
When Hernando Cortés arrived in New Mexico, he realized the importance of cocoa for indigenous people. He became very interested in the cocoa plantations because it was something he could use to exchange for things like gold. Spanish people didn't really see anything appealing in chocolate. It was a thick, hot, spicy, and dark elixir. Eventually, they tried it out because there was no wine or anything else to drink.
By 1521, the Spanish had invaded Tenochtitlan, now known as Mexico City. They brutally killed most of the indigenous population. Despite systemic eradication of indigenous culture, chocolate endured within the indigenous population and continued to be a primary source of currency and food. Eventually, Spanish missionaries discovered chocolate's intrinsic properties.
People in the convents and monasteries were the ones who started trying new ways to prepare chocolate, making it more attractive to their palates. They began using cane sugar that the Spanish were already manufacturing in Cuba. And it was at that time they came out with the basic recipe for chocolate today, which is cocoa, sugar, and cinnamon. In 1527, the first cargo boat was sent from Mexico to Spain with cocoa. They couldn't stop their habit of having a cup of chocolate. It became kind of an addiction for them, similar to coffee, and it spread out across Europe as something fashionable among the nobility and the wealthy. Chefs of the royal houses experimented with this new exotic flavor in some of their dishes, especially desserts. Around 1770, with the Industrial Revolution, the mass production of chocolate came out, spreading its popularity among the citizen. In the late 19th century, a Swiss firm developed the recipe for making milk chocolate. That is why the Swiss say they invented chocolate, but the truth is they invented milk chocolate. This is when chocolate became a candy. Chocolate, a symbol of holiness and power, produced for elite consumption in Mexico, became a candy for mass consumption in Europe. Cocoa contains 50% butter, so when you blend it, it automatically becomes a paste.
Welcome back to the opening video. Today I'm going to show you guys how to use this kit to make mojito spheres. Now in this...
one's just a very, very short one. Sorry, this one's a very short one. It explains a little bit more about the farming.
Is cacao. Have you ever wondered which ingredients go into making chocolate? Would you be surprised to learn that one of the main ingredients is a kind of seed that looks like this? The seeds grow from cacao trees, which can be found in warm tropical regions, such as here in the Ivory Coast, which is on the west coast of Africa, nearly 3,000 miles away from the United Kingdom. They also grow in lots of other countries in the tropics, such as Ecuador, Brazil, and Indonesia. This is because all of these places are warm and humid. The cacao trees produce large, colourful pods that look like this, hard and melon-shaped. They grow straight from the trunk and larger branches of the trees. And once they have ripened from green to yellow, red or orange, the farmer knows they're ready for harvest. There are a few different varieties of cacao. The trees resemble apple trees and grow no more than 25 feet tall. The farmer harvests the cacao pods using a very sharp blade. It's hard work in the hot sun, but the farmers are very skilled. The pods are then cut open to reveal the white fleshy fruit and seeds inside. They typically contain more than 50 seeds each. As you can see, the fresh seeds don't look anything like chocolate at this point. They're not even brown in colour. The seeds are then taken to a processing house. First, the seeds are placed into wooden boxes like this and covered with large banana leaves to protect them. This process allows the seeds to develop a richer flavour and is known as fermentation. During fermentation, the seeds turn from white to brown. Once they are fermented, the next stage is to dry the seeds. This takes around a week, and during this process, the dried seeds lose so much water that they end up around half their original weight. They are now called cocoa beans and look like this. Next, the cocoa beans are roasted in a machine. Roasting makes sure that any bacteria that might be present is killed, and it also helps to give the beans a nice flavour and colour. The roasted beans are then winnowed. This process separates the outer husk so that only the inside remains. The inside is the most important part, as this is used to make the chocolate. The beans are then ground and heated so that they melt into what we call a chocolate liquor. Once the chocolate liquor has cooled down, it sets and becomes what is called cocoa mass. It is then ready to be transported by ship to factories all over the world, where it will be made into tasty chocolate for you to enjoy as a treat.
100% Canadian right. There we go. Okay, I don't know where the lights are. Right.
Want them back on?
Yep, please. Okay, so have you ever wondered why chocolate is so expensive? To give you a better idea. Yeah. You know, I mean, we go into stores and you can get, we can get cheap chocolate, but they have a lot of fillers in it. They don't have a lot of chocolate, and that's the big difference. You really have to look at the ingredients. So the higher the cocoa content, the more expensive it is. And you can see that the whole process, it goes through the trees. They can harvest only twice a year, about every 5 to 6 months can they harvest those trees and take the cocoa pods off. And it takes sometimes almost up to 5 years to get a tree to maturity so that it can actually grow the cocoa pods. Yeah, and it is grown in the tropics under, under usually the shade of banana trees is where it's grown. And like you saw there, the workers, usually the farms are about 2 to 3 acres. They're not huge farms, and it's really a family business. In bringing, they're bringing the cocoa pods. Everybody gets involved in it. Yeah. Any questions?
How long does the tree last, you know?
You know what, I think it lasts quite a while. They've never mentioned that, but when you consider that it's a 4,000-year-old industry, I would say the trees last quite a while. Yeah, if you wanted to grow more, then you would be planting more trees, yeah. It's kind of like the tea plants, right? They're quite old, and there's some that are like 5,000 years old, and they're still going. Yeah.
So what's the difference between dark milk and white?
Okay, so what's the difference between dark chocolate milk and white chocolate? Well, white chocolate has no cocoa in it. It is the fat. It is the cocoa butter. When you separate the cocoa and the cocoa butter together, if you take a look at our white machine in the morning, you'll see almost looks like clarified butter sitting on the top of it. Yeah, that's what, so the white chocolate, if you're allergic to chocolate, white chocolate is something you could probably eat because it's just actually cocoa butter. The dark chocolate has a very high percentage of cocoa, and it doesn't have the milk in it. So it will have some sugar, maybe some soy lecithin as an emulsifier, vanilla, and that is it. The milk chocolate will have a lesser percentage of cocoa in it. Ours has 37%, our dark has a minimum of 70, but it will have milk in it. So that's the difference. So dark chocolate, our dark chocolate is no dairy and no gluten. Our white chocolate has no gluten, but it has dairy in it. It's got milk powder and milk in it. Yeah, so, yeah.
Do all three have the same caloric count?
The white would be higher because it's like fat.
So the dark would be lower?
I'd have to look, but I would think so because it's got it's got the higher cocoa content. It's the same thing with what I gave you, the nibs. It would have less too because it doesn't have any sugar or fat in it. So the dark chocolate, the higher the cocoa content, the less the sugar content. So if you're watching your sugars as a diabetic, you don't necessarily have to get diabetic chocolate. You just have to eat in moderation and go for the highest dark chocolate that you can actually tolerate. Yeah. Anybody else?
The cocoa butter, do you know anything about the process, like how that's separated off, where that
There's
comes from in
machinery.
the process?
Yeah, there's a machinery that does it, and almost like they squeeze it out. There's a big machine that the nibs go through, and the cocoa goes one way, and the fat or the cocoa butter goes the other way. I've seen the videos of it.
Okay, so it is a part of the cocoa bean.
Yes.
It's separated off, like,
Yeah, it's
like
kind of,
whey, you know.
yeah, it's like when farming, where you've got your milk and you've got your cream, you've got your separator, right? It's the same. It's kind of the same idea. Yeah.
Because there was a radio program, CBC, I think, last couple of days, talking about whether white chocolate, in fact, was chocolate. And I guess it is because it has a part of the cocoa bean in it, but really it's not chocolate in the true sense of the word, from what I can gather.
Yeah, that's kind of one of those conversations you can have over a jug of beer to debate. And in one sense it's absolutely right because it is part of the cocoa bean, but we think of chocolate as the cocoa, not the so you could make an argument to say it is chocolate, but it's not cocoa chocolate.
Yeah. When you get your chocolate in, does it look like the beans that we saw here, or it's already been put into obviously into the hard form, but is it the same product, or is there something been added to it before you see it?
Our chocolate, it's like that's like on that ship coming over.
Yeah.
Okay, so that chocolate would go to the Lints and the Calibos and the cacao berries of the world, who would then add the milk, the vanilla, the soy lecithin,
Right.
and then it would come to us to put into the machines.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So they do a process of the mix and everything.
Yeah, and the reason you get different tastes between like the Belgium and the Swiss and the Dutch chocolate is because their processes are different. And the other thing is the differences in chocolate. Chocolate's a lot like vineyards or tea plants. It takes on the terroir where it's growing. Okay, so if it's chocolate that's coming from Ecuador or chocolate that's coming from Madagascar, you could actually taste the difference. And the other thing is when you talk about adding milk to chocolate, I mean the Swiss cows will be feeding on something a little different in vegetation than the Belgian cows will be, right? So you're going to get those different tastes. So we get our chocolate actually comes right from Switzerland. It comes through Lindt to a third-party warehouse in Toronto, and then we have to go get it. And then we put it in the machines, and the difference too is people will come in the store and say, I want to buy some chocolate because I want to dip some strawberries. Well, that's great if you're just going to eat them, but chocolate, good chocolate, or what we call in the industry is couverture. Couverture is chocolate with no fillers in it, so it's the high-end chocolate. And scientifically, chocolate has several crystals in it. And when you heat chocolate up, good couverture up, the crystals kind of go all run amok, right? So that if you just let it sit and harden up again, if you've all seen it, you've seen that bloom, that white color that comes on chocolate, right? You've seen it. And that's called it's either going to be a fat bloom or a sugar bloom because it means it's no longer in temper. Our job as chocolatiers is to take that one crystal we need, which I think is crystal number 4, and to bring it back in so that when we make our chocolate, it is shiny, it's got good snap to it. So if you're looking for really good chocolate, what they do is they'll smell it first to get kind of get the notes of the chocolate. Then they'll break it up by their ear. You want to have good snap with the chocolate. Then they'll put a piece on their tongue and they'll let it melt. And that's how they'll decide whether the chocolate is a good chocolate or if it's in temper. Yeah, and we have days at the store where we cannot get our machines to cooperate because we have to, the tempering process is a process of raising and lowering. So we raise it up and then we have to start slowly lowering it back down to get those crystals all kind of married together again. So then we get that nice shine that you see and the nice snap that you have. And there's days that 12 o'clock comes along, we haven't made a piece of chocolate because the machines are going, not interested today. The other thing that really affects chocolate when we're making it is temperature and humidity. Changes in our production area by 1 or 2 degrees could change the temper of the machines. If we get a high humidity and rain coming in, we can't make chocolate. I don't have a humidity controlled room in the old building that we're in. And of course the door's always opening and closing, so temperature's going up or going down. So we have to constantly just check the machines to make sure that they're still in temper, that we can work with them. So it's quite, when you take a look at from the time that they actually take these pods down and we process it, and then we get it, and then we start working with it, it's quite a process. And I've said at the very beginning, it's very laborious, but I'm telling you, the outcome, it's well worth it. Well worth it.
Yes, it seems to have a lot of characteristics that have to be met along the way.
Yeah. You can go to the bulk barn and get like Merkin's chocolate, and you can melt it, and you won't get any fat bloom. That's because the first ingredient is oil.
Yeah.
The second ingredient is palm oil. The third ingredient is sugar. You keep going down the list of 20 things. I think ours has maybe 4 or 5 ingredients. There's no oil in ours at all.
Baker's chocolate, which is used in baking and the little chips and stuff, it really doesn't seem to have a strong chocolate flavor to it because there's so little cocoa in it.
Yeah. The FDA only calls for 10% of cocoa for you to call it chocolate. 10%. Okay, so if you get 10% in a chocolate in a bar, okay, you can add whatever else you want in there as long as it has 10% and you can call it chocolate. Yeah.
Does some chocolate have wax in it?
Yes. And shellac.
Oh.
Yep. You can and you can put in minute amounts of things that aren't going to harm people, but they have to put it on the label, right? So definitely you can taste that wax too. As soon as you get a piece that's got wax in it, you can taste it. Those are all fillers because chocolate is expensive. It's like coffee beans, and the thing is, it's a volatile market too, up and down, dependent on weather, the whole thing. So back thousands of years ago, the only people that could afford chocolate was royalty. Nobody else could afford it. So you had the royalty, the priests, and they had the warriors that had the chocolate, but that was it. No other person could afford to have chocolate. Any other questions?
Well, I don't want hesitate, but what physical or weight size would your chocolate blocks come in? What's the norm for?
Usually, I'm just trying to think, my bags of my little, they're kind of little medallions.
Oh, okay.
Those are 2.5 kilogram bags. And so that's what, 2.2 kilograms, so 5 pounds in there.
So that's the blocks of chocolate they ship have, in the process, have been added to.
Yeah.
And then instead of coming out in a block, it comes out in.
We get it two ways. We get big blocks,
Yeah.
and they're harder to work with because I got a block that's this big,
Yeah.
and I got to get that in the machine, got to get melt where I can throw the medallions in, and when I get my
Yeah.
machine halfway down, I can go get a couple bags of medallions and just throw them in, and they'll be melted in a half hour. Go
Yeah.
have a cup of tea and come back, and I'll be ready to go again.
What are the molds made out of?
They're polycarbonate.
Okay.
We get most of our molds, our good molds are all from Belgium. Yeah. We just got a couple in. Actually, I had a big order to do and I couldn't find the mold, so I actually had a direct ship from Italy. But they're polycarbonate. You can get the hobby molds. So if you want to do some chocolate and fool around with it, you can go to the bulk barn and get hobby molds. They just won't, for us commercially, they're not going to last. Yeah, they just, because we're using them all the time. And we wear them out. We wear the good polycarbonate ones out as well. But I mean, they'll last a lot longer. You're going to be paying starting at least $25. Some of the molds we have are upwards of $100 for the mold. So you got to sell a lot of that chocolate just to pay for the mold.
I have a shoe fetish, and this is a little bit off topic, but the shoes, the women's high heels that you do are fabulous. I've even sent a couple to my sister, and she couldn't get away from them.
Yeah, we do.
They're fun, yes.
Thanks. We do really well with them. We have so many people in the summertime. We have people in from San Francisco. They couldn't get over our shoes. So I'd say, you're from San Francisco. You have chocolate shops, right? And they go, yeah, but they don't do, like we paint, like Linda's a really good artist, right? So we paint the shoes and stuff like that. So thank you. Thank you.
And you have the best molds for bunnies.
Oh, yeah.
Easter bunny, you have the best, like with the best faces. I was just wondering, so say I did want to do something like that, like dip strawberries or whatever, could I buy a chocolate bar and then melt it and do it, or you can't do that?
Well, you can. You just have to make sure that it's in temper. That the chances is that when it dries, you'll get the white on it, right? Yeah. So you could. I mean, I have people that do that. And I have had people say, come into the store and go, oh well, I'm just gonna buy some bars and do it myself, right? It's gonna be a whole lot cheaper. And they come back about 2 weeks later going, okay, I'm gonna buy it now. I'm going, okay, yeah. You know, it's really interesting because when I first started the store, I don't have a chocolate background. My only background in chocolate is my family's from Holland, and we always got Dutch chocolate, right? So when I started it, I was under the impression you just threw it in the machine and you melted it and away you went. I had no idea of the learning curve I was up against. I had no idea. There was days I thought to myself, if I had known when I had to learn that there may not be a chocolate wrap, right? But yeah, so it's, but now that we're doing it and we're accustomed to it, but yeah, there was a pretty good learning curve, and like especially when you're thinking you could just melt it, melt it, pour it in a mold. I mean, how hard can that be, right? No.
You say you opened in 2006?
Yeah.
And so what were you doing before that?
A consultant for Hydro.
Oh.
Yeah, so.
Okay, not in the chocolate.
No, I've never, no, I wasn't. This is a total.
2006 is when you started, and that's.
Yeah.
Oh.
No, I have no background at all. This was truly a complete, change in career.
Venture.
Never been in retail, always been corporate.
Oh, God.
Never been in retail at all. Didn't know a thing about chocolate. As a matter of fact, when we leased or rented the property we are in now from Gord Blake,
Yeah.
I had no supplier for chocolate. I just had a building. That was it. I just had a building and basically a dream.
Yep.
That was it, right?
And then go from there.
Yeah, I went from there. So the first year we wholesaled from a Swiss family in Toronto. So we bought all our truffles from them, we bought all our chocolate from them. And then that's when I got the bright idea to get a chocolate machine, because it really couldn't be that hard to do. And that's when I started learning that maybe it was a little harder than I thought. So we now have 3 machines. We started with one, and we now have one dedicated to milk, one dedicated to dark, and one for white.
And where did the name come from?
Oh, that's a story too.
Yes, okay, tell me.
The chocolate rabbit was not the first name.
Okay.
It wasn't the first name. I had, my husband has Lyme disease, so we were in and out of the hospital quite a bit. And I had sent the name off to my accountant, and we were at the hospital, and Juanita called me and said the name that I wanted was something to do with cottage country. I can't even remember now what it was, but something to do with cottage country. And she said, that name is gone. I thought, you gotta be kidding me, it's a weird name, how can that be gone?
Yeah.
So I'm standing at the old hospital, and you know how the shop, their little gift shop,
Yes.
that you could see in from the outside. So I was standing there, and I was looking in the window at all the little things in the shop, and she said, "Do you have another name?" And I hadn't really thought of one. And I was looking right at rabbits. And I said to her, "What about the chocolate rabbit?" And she started to laugh.
Yeah.
And I said,
Catchy.
well, yeah, she laughed because she said, "You're never gonna get that. That's too simple." It's because you have to register, right, with Consumer Commercial Relations, you have to get your name registered and stuff. I said, well, my husband's in an emergency. I was like, we'll try it, right? So she told me the story. She phoned the guy back at the Consumer Commercial Relations and said she wants the chocolate rabbit. And he laughed. And he said, there's no hope in a snow wall that she's gonna get the chocolate rabbit. Well, sure enough, it was available.
There you go.
And that's how the name was born. I will never forget that gift shop, I'll never forget those rabbits. But it ties in because when I travel, because in my other work, I travel to the States quite a bit, and I always picked up little stuffed rabbits. I had these tiny little stuffed rabbits, and my dad used to work at a rabbit farm.
Oh.
So when I sat...
How many children do you have?
It was really meant to be, because when I thought about it, I thought, wait a second, my dad always bred and raised rabbits right up until he passed away. Yeah, and I had always collected those little tiny bunnies, not the big ones, little tiny bunnies. Everywhere I went, saw a bunny, I would get, so a lot of the bunnies in the store that you see are my personal bunnies that I've gathered throughout my career and traveling. So that's how it got its name. It wasn't anything kind of, yeah. Anybody else? Okay, I want to thank you for the opportunity to talk about the chocolate and having me here. And I also want to thank folks for supporting us, because without local support, we wouldn't exist. We often get people saying, oh, it must be, you open year round, and we go, yes, and they go, well, what do you do once all the seasonal people are gone? I'm going, okay, the seasonal people are with us for 8 weeks, okay? Do the math, it's our local people that keep us going, so I want to say thank you for that as well.
You're welcome.
Okay, and I have some tips.
I found those 2 videos very, very good.
Good.
Yeah, I assume that one's a YouTube, so it's on,
Yes.
to be traced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're on YouTube. Yeah, because I like to get, it's nice to talk about it, but it's hard to visualize sometimes when when I say about it growing out of the side of the tree, everybody could draw me a different picture of what that meant, but now that we've all seen it the way it is, and the fact that you saw them with those long handled knives to cut them off the tree, and they all fall to the ground, and they run around and they pick them up, and then they sit like that in a circle and break those pods and pull that white pulp out and get it dried under banana leaves. So yeah, next time you eat a piece of chocolate, you'll know exactly all the work that goes into getting it to us.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. All right, I have some... Once you're finished, I'll let you come up here and you can look at the pods and grab your chocolate. I'll let Dawn finish.
Don't go away.
Oh. Chocolate.
I found that very interesting. Those people that didn't come here missed a hell of a good presentation. Anyway, I'd like to take this opportunity to give you a small token of our gratitude for you coming and doing that.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I have a bit of stuff here to go through to close out the meeting.
Maybe I'll pass
As
around.
soon as I get my eyes on.